Welcome to EURACTIV's Tweets of the Week. Nicola Sturgeon flexes her muscles, new MEPs make the trip to Brussels, and top Tory wannabes caught in drug-taking tussles. This episode is supported by EDAA. Find out more about them at the end. On Tuesday, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon visited Brussels. She met with Juncker and Michel Barnier and had a good discussion on issues of common interest and the state of play on Brexit, according to Commission Spokesman Margaritis Schinas. But speaking to the BBC outside the Berlaymont, she described Brexit as a horror show, said all the current Tory candidates would be disastrous for the UK, and accused Jeremy Hunt of pathetic and childish behaviour after he withdrew support for the First Minister's trip to Brussels to talk to EU leaders. Later in the day, she told EURACTIV's Sam Stolton that the case for Scottish independence is more urgent in the context of a hard Brexit. Alistair McGregor was impressed. No flannel, no mumbling, head and shoulders above other politicos, he said. Mari Hunter was just glad it wasn't a discussion about drugs or who would win a fight between a lion and a bear. More about that later. But first, also showing up in Brussels, many for the first time, was the new crop of MEPs. Delara Burkhardt was excited to sign for her first Progressives group meeting, prompting spoof account MEP assistants to tweet, "Aww, it's always an emotional moment the first time they get €320 just for signing a piece of paper and make the causal link between the two." And speaking of MEP assistants, Bruno Waterfield wondered whether this was the new standard for auditions. Quite a contrast to Westminster, commented Darren McCaffrey. Richard Tice was on his first trip to Brussels, but hoping for not too many more. Fellow Brexiteer Lance Foreman, meanwhile, claimed that there's no need to take taxis in Brussels if you're an MEP, as the British taxpayer has paid for a nice fleet of Mercedes. Evan O'Connell and many others pointed out that's a Skoda. So even if when Brexit happens, it's going to be a very long few months. Much more upbeat, showing around the new young Green MEPs, was Terry, definitely not a granny, Reinke, who urged them to rock this Parliament. EPP arrivals also posed for the obligatory photo, and the new Party MEP, Nico Semsrott, is taking no chances about being recognised on his new badge. For all those who have asked, I will also be sitting in plenary wearing this hoodie, he said. How very on brand. And if branding is your thing, then you couldn't miss the news that ALDE has changed its name to Renew Europe. Cue lots of people wondering how to refer to the group in passing. Finally, in the UK, Conservative leader race to be next Prime Minister, candidates were tripping over themselves to reveal past bad behaviour. Jeremy Hunt admitted to sipping a cannabis lassi in India, and Rory Stewart is apparently an opium fiend, although you wouldn't know it to look at him. Indeed, John McDougall reckons he's the one that's tripping. But the prize for dodgiest admission goes to Michael Gove, who copped to using cocaine as a young journalist. James Felton was one of the many to point out his hypocrisy. And the front pages predictably reacted with glee. The Metro on Monday urged candidates to form a line here, while the Sun went with a gag about crack. But honestly, as former MEP Roger Helmer asked, is Gove's cocaine confession designed to prevent a damaging leak? Or does he think it makes him look hip and woke and with it? However, MEP Richard Corbett said that if a teacher admitted to having taken drugs, he or she would lose their job. But when Gove, Johnson et al. Admit to it, they can still go on and even aspire to be PM. One rule for ordinary people, another for the Tory elite. Tim Stanley summed it up. Kids, don't do drugs. You could end up a Tory MP. This week's episode is supported by the European Interactive Digital Advertising Alliance. Last year, around 159 billion ad choices icons were delivered in online advertising. Find out more in EDAA's annual activity report. And that's it for another week. Join me again next Friday for more snarks and larks in the Brussels bubble Twitter sphere.